Hi everyone, it's James here. Welcome to another video. So today I'd just like to talk briefly about a forthcoming album which I've been lucky enough to get a advance copy of, and it is the album Rays on the Water by Andy McMaster. Now, long-term viewers to my channel will know that I was a big fan of the Motors back in the day. The Motors were a kind of pub rock stroke new wave band that came up in 1977. This album, approved by the Motors, was a huge album for me when I was growing up. It was one of the first records I ever owned myself and played myself on a record player. And I was such a big fan of the Motors that whenever they came on TV, my dad used to have to take pictures of the TV screen. You know, this is back in the day before we had any, whatever, you know, Google or anything, and there were no video recorders. So somewhere back in my parents' house, you know, I've got lots of still photos of the Motors appearing on such shows as Jukebox Jury and goodness knows what else. But yeah, I was a big fan, and the Motors ceased operations in 1979 after their third album, which was Tenement Steps, and the various members dispersed. Now, Andy McMaster, bass, keyboards and vocals, he was the guy that wrote Airport, which was the band's biggest hit. He vanished into the wilderness for many years, and then a few years ago he miraculously popped back up with this rather fine CD album, Agenda 21, and at the time I made a video. I'll link to that if you haven't seen it. It was a video looking back at Andy's entire career to date, and just exploring some of the great music from the Motors heyday and from the other bands that he'd been in, and you know, the various records that he'd been associated with. But it was a bit of a strange kind of thing, because Andy had been gone for so long, and I'd long given up hope of ever seeing anything by him again. He did make an album in the late 80s, but it was never really released. I think a single came out, and anyway, Andy is now back up and running again as a kind of one-man operation. He's got a band. I think he's based down on the south coast of England, and he did a couple of gigs a couple of years ago, and he's now made this new CD. I'm in touch with Andy now via his manager. They sent me this CD a while ago. It's not coming out until, I think it's coming out later this spring, but I thought I would just come on and just do a quick little preview of it, and just let you know where you can get hold of it. So if there's any Motors fans out there who perhaps are not aware of Andy's comeback, then you can check out this album. And you know, anybody else who might not know about Andy's career, you can check this out. But the record has got a wide variety of stuff on it. The first track, The Road to Montgomery, is just a kind of classic. It's got a classic kind of pub rock groove to it. You know, think Graham Parker. Really catchy. Impossible is Nothing, the second track, though, is a beautiful kind of windswept ballad. I mean, Andy's strength was always his, you know, his grasp of pop songwriting. He could always write a good hook, and I'm really pleased to see that talent is kind of undimmed, really. Really lovely song. Then we got a track that made me smile. It's called Au Revoir Tristesse, and it's what Andy's done in this song. He's taken the Chopin Etude number 10, and he's put his own vocal line above it. Now, the reason that this made me smile was when I was growing up, I mean, my dad, his favourite classical composer of all time is Frédéric Chopin. So I grew up with, you know, pictures of Chopin around the house, you know, framed photographs of the great man's scores. You know, I learnt to play Chopin when I was growing up, and my dad always used to play that particular piece when I was extremely young. My dad had a piano at one end of the house, and he would sit playing Chopin, and you know, my earliest memories really is of hearing piano music from by Chopin drifting through the house, and that was one particular piece that I kind of, you know, really strongly remember. So it kind of like, it's quite an emotional experience hearing that. But the other thing about it was, I'm really sorry, Andy, but my dad would really disapprove of any piece of Chopin being turned into a pop song. So that kind of made me laugh, really. But a really interesting kind of experiment in blending pop and classical together, I guess. And then it goes into a kind of club tune toward the end. So really quirky, really nice. The track Jerusalem apparently is about a visit to the Holy Land that Andy undertook a few years ago. Hysteria, I'd say that was a kind of squally drum machine slice of psych pop. with an earworm twin guitar, harmony guitar riff. A track called Leicester City, which is drenched in sitar. I think there's a cathedral organ solo in that one. And it appears to be a kind of elegy to the multicultural city which is Leicester. Nice song. This is the Day. That was written to evoke Andy's memory of a summer of melting tar on the cobbles of Gallowgate in Glasgow. And then a complete contrast, Hard Drugs, which again is from the aborted album from 1987. That's like a kind of 80s take on glam rock. It's kind of led with a drum machine and it's got a very kind of agity kind of chorus. Really good track. Love Again is a spiritually inclined acoustic guitar song with more than a touch of Bob Dylan. And maybe late period George Harrison as well. Death Cafe is a quirky pop song with a darkly surreal lyric and chiming 12th string guitars. Bit of a kind of Zippo's Aloft one, this. I can quite imagine this being done in a kind of stadium, you know, with people swaying along to it. And then finally, the final song, When Germany Was Bad, is a kind of interesting left field pop song, which seemed to be at least partly a memory perhaps of courtship rituals going on in air raid shelters during World War II, 1945, the song references. So just like on the first album, Andy's lyrical breadth is really quite impressive. He kind of writes about lots of different subjects, roams around the lyrical spectrum. And like I said, his the musical styles that he's exploring are very diverse. He's not kind of narrowing himself down to one particular kind of music. 3 of the tracks actually were produced by Peter Kerr, and long-term Motors fans will know that he was the guy that produced Approved by the Motors. I think they're the tracks that date back to the 80s. Peter Kerr has passed on now, I believe. I'll link down below to Andy's Facebook page, so you can check that out if you want to keep up to date with developments for this release. And in the meantime, I will leave you with some needle drops. So, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back soon. Take care, folks. Bye bye. All your life. So welcome to the kingdom. Welcome to the children in golden cobbles on the street, silver sunlight by your feet. Everybody, everywhere around the streets, there's nothing is impossible. It's easily attainable.